Pentagon launches ambitious drone plan. In an initiative that marks a strategic turn in U.S. military operations, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced mass production of lethal, cheap, and disposable use, directly inspired by the Ukraine experience in the war against Russia. The goal is clear: to reach the air domain with drones by 2027. For this, the plan predicts that each U.S. Army squad be equipped with low-cost kamikaze drones by the end of 2026. These drones will not be treated as long-term equipment but as ammunition, consumables ready to be used and sacrificed for tactical goals. This paradigm change is deep. The Pentagon is breaking with the traditional bureaucracy that has always marked the process of military acquisition. The new guideline gives direct power to combat units to buy, modify, and even print 3D drones on the battlefield itself. The idea is to accelerate adaptation and innovation in real time. Until September 2025, all armed forces, Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force shall form experimental units that will put the drones in practical and constant use. It is the birth of a new culture of war, in which flexibility, rapid production, and decentralization become central elements. The model that inspires this revolution is clear: the war in Ukraine. Estimates indicate that between 70% and 75% of casualties in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict are caused by drones. They became the main instrument of attack and recognition, replacing in many cases the conventional artillery. The Pentagon saw this as a clear sign that drones are no longer the future. They are the present of modern war. And if the U.S. doesn't act quickly, they risk being left behind. The type of drone that draws the most attention is FPV kamikaze. Compact, cheap, and controlled by virtual reality glasses, this drone is a weapon of precision visually controlled by the operator. With speeds that reach 55 kilometers per hour and explosives up to 2 kilograms, it is designed for a single use, flying to the target and detonating. Its average cost is around $500, a price much lower than traditional weapons. However, even with this lethality, its success rate still varies, with up to 40% of missions failing by electronic interference, technical failures, or signal loss. Still, the cost-benefit makes it indispensable in the current scenario. But what impresses even more is the scale of production. In 2024 alone, Ukraine manufactured 1.2 million FPV drones. In 2025, the projection is even bolder: 2.5 million units produced, with an average of 200,000 per month. This scalability, associated with technical simplicity and efficacy on the battlefield, is exactly what Secretary Hegseth wants to replicate. He no longer sees drones as high-tech projects restricted to special forces, but as daily consumption pieces, such as ammunition cartridges or grenades. And for this, the U.S. will need to put into action the power of its industry, its engineering, and its logistical capacity. The first stage of this plan is already underway. With the unlocking of restrictive policies and the decentralization of production, the Pentagon hopes to see units in the field by manufacturing and testing drones adapted to their specific needs. 3D printers, modification software, and trained operators will become part of the daily life of the troops. The battlefield will be a living laboratory, where each squad can try and innovate. The Ukraine war in this context becomes a brutal laboratory model, where you learn from real-time errors and successes. For the Pentagon, it is not just about copying what works, but of improving, climbing, and incorporating each innovation into the formal structure of the American Armed Forces. In addition to the FPV kamikaze drones, another model that caught the Pentagon's attention is grenade throw drones. Informally known as bombers, these devices are simple modifications of commercial drones, adapted to load and release multiple grenades or submunitions on enemy positions. In practice, they function as a portable air artillery, manually controlled by soldiers in the field. This innovation, although rudimentary, has been highly effective. In February 2025, for example, a 22% increase in the hit rate against enemy targets was recorded with the use of these drones. For the American program, this represents a clear line of development. Low-cost and high-adaptability multifunctional drones that can be rapidly modified by the troops themselves, with 3D printing support and customization software. This type of operational flexibility is what differentiates the conflict in Ukraine from previous wars. It is no longer a question of waiting months for a new weaponry model. Now the solutions are built on the battlefield itself. This mindset of immediate adaptation is one of the main lessons that the United States want to incorporate. And for this, it will be necessary to train soldiers not only as combatants, but as operators, makeshift engineers, and basic programmers. A new combatant profile is emerging, more technical, more versatile, more connected with technology. Another innovation that aroused interest in the Pentagon is the use of the so-called Dragon drones, or drones flames. These devices use Finnish loads, a mixture of aluminum iron oxide that, when activated, generates temperatures close to 2,500 degrees Celsius. The effect is devastating. Tree lines are set on fire, ammunition deposits explode, whole trenches are destroyed. In addition to physical damage, the psychological impact of these drones is huge. Enemy troops are forced to get out of fortified positions, abandon hiding places, and expose themselves to the enemy fire. This type of weaponry, although not new, gains a new dimension when coupled with light and stealthy drones. The Pentagon studies integrating this capacity into the arsenal of the armed forces focused on area missions, saturation operations, and camouflage defenses neutralization. The technology behind these advances is also evolving rapidly. One of the main obstacles faced by Ukrainian FPV drones, for example, is electronic interference. Modern war is no longer just kinetic, it is also a signal war, where jammers and blockers try to overthrow drones, interrupt communications, and shuffle controls. In response to this, Ukrainian engineers began to use direct optical fibers and visual links, solutions that are being carefully analyzed by the U.S. defense sector. The idea is to develop interference-resistant systems with precise control even in highly electrified environments. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Defense is already beginning to test their own experimental units, applying learning from Ukraine. Some military bases have been transformed into test centers for new drone models, focusing especially on the integration between man and machine, the use of augmented reality, and the development of tactical artificial intelligence. These tests are not just intended to create more lethal drones, but also smarter drones capable of identifying targets, making flight decisions, and adapting routes in real time. This fusion between accessible hardware, sophisticated software, and increasingly specialized operators represents the new border of war. The reaction time between the conception of an idea and its practical application in the field is decreasing dramatically. Which once took years, now it can be done in weeks or even days. The bureaucracy that once waged the technological advance was, for now, placed aside. Finally, what the Pentagon wants is not just to increase the amount of drones on the battlefield, but completely change the doctrine of war. It is not enough to have the equipment, it is necessary to rethink how they are used, how they are trained, how they integrate with existing tactics. This new doctrine is already in the testing phase and, according to internal sources, should become an official part of the American military strategy by the end of 2026. The bet is made: drones such as ammunition, war as laboratory, soldiers as operators. The Pentagon wants to transform emerging technology into a central pillar of its military power. And with the experience of Ukraine as a living example, this transformation is happening faster than many imagined. While the audience sees only drones videos exploding targets with almost surgical accuracy, there is something much bigger happening behind the scenes. The drone war is not just about technology, it is about narrative rule, vigilance, and the control of the next generation of fighting, and all this operates invisibly, silently, and often outside the eyes of international law. The United States, for example, operate drones in dozens of countries where they have never formally declared war. In the name of counterterrorism, attacks are conducted in areas such as Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan, places where the line between real threat and suspicion is as thin as it is convenient. The legality of these actions, often ignored or covered by generic justifications of national security. But why is this important now? Because we are living the transition to an era when armed drones, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition come together to create an autonomous war system where human beings no longer need to tighten the trigger. Decisions will be made by algorithms. And if you think this exaggerates, know that projects like Loyal Wingman from Boeing or Skyborg from USAF are already in advanced testing phases. These platforms promise unmanned fighters that operate in conjunction with human fighters, but with increasing autonomy to engage targets. Now imagine this system in the hands of countries with totalitarian regimes, or even private corporations, paramilitary groups, or traffickers with access to AI, geolocation, and weaponry via dark web. The scale of power we know can simply disappear. The war, which was previously locked on battlefields or prolonged occupations, will now be a series of surgical executions by remote control, made by agents who never step outside the office. And there is still another ignored aspect: domestic surveillance. Drones are not only used in battlefields. In the United States, agencies such as FBI and DHS use drones for urban monitoring, border control, and internal safety operations. In China, pigeon-shaped drones, yes, literally artificial birds, are used to spy populations into sensitive regions such as Xinjiang. What began as a weapon of war is now incorporated into the daily life of civil surveillance. And here is the most uncomfortable point of all. This war has no borders, has no formal statement, and does not need popular authorization. It is already happening. And with each passing day, more countries adhere to the game, developing their own drones arsenals. Turkey, Iran, Israel, India, China, South Korea, all are investing heavily in this sector. We are therefore on the brink of a digital arms race. And unlike past wars, this is not in the news with troops landing or flags being raised. This war is silent, persistent, and unfolds in the skies, far above the head of a population that keeps looking down.